Good news for DOGE. House Republicans have passed a rescissions package to slash funding for NPR, PBS, international aid, and other spending.
The vote was 214 to 212. All Democrats voted against the measure, and only 4 Republicans followed suit.
If the package passes the Senate, Congress would cancel a total of $9.4 billion in funding. Speaker Mike Johnson wrote on X, "Today's House passage of this initial rescissions package marks a critical step toward a more responsible and transparent government that puts the interests of the American taxpayers first. This is just one of the multiple ways Republicans are codifying President Trump's executive orders and DOGE's findings."
Here's a closer look at what exactly the package would cut. $1.1 billion to the Corporation for Public Broadcasting would be cut. This is the arm that gives funding to PBS and NPR. The other $8.3 million will be getting cut from USAID and other international programs. $8.3 billion, excuse me.
Some Republicans have voiced concern for a Bush-era program called PEPFAR. PEPFAR is meant to combat AIDS and HIV and is credited with saving millions of lives in Africa. Republican Senator Lisa Murkowski has voiced her opposition to the package, saying in part, "Not only would a large portion of Alaska communities lose their local programming, but warning systems for natural disasters, power outages, boil water advisories, and other alerts would be severely hampered."
PBS CEO Paula Kerger said in a statement, "The fight to protect public media does not end with this vote, and we will continue to make the case for our essential service in the days and weeks to come." Just briefly on the PBS-NPR thing, Amber, PBS gets about 15% of its funding, I think, from the government. NPR, it's only about 1%. So, I mean, there's an argument to be made, I think, for those organisations just to move away from government funding at all and try to make up the deficit themselves. But what's your view on the broader thing?
Yeah, I agree with that those two should become independent. I mean, they have a lot of criticisms of the Trump administration. Great, don't take their money, right? Simple solution. But I think,
Well, we'll get into that.
I know, we will.
Yeah.
But I mean, generally, I'm supportive of the bill. I'm sure there's probably 1 or 2 things in it that I wouldn't agree with cutting. I also haven't obviously been able to read the entire thing and look at every single program. So maybe you'll catch me on one. I don't know.
Oh, no.
But I think, again, generally speaking, the idea of pulling back spending that's already been appropriated through the rescissions process, where you only need 51 votes to pass through the Senate, is a really smart, strategic way for the Republicans to get these DOGE measures implemented when they're obviously not going to get 60 votes in the Senate. They have basically 2 options, which is they can do the continuing resolution, which is all mandatory spending, or they can do rescissions on discretionary spending. They're never going to get DOGE cuts through the appropriations process, which does require that 2/3 majority, or the 60 votes in the Senate. So this is smart. Look, $10 billion, I think taxpayers will be happy to see that saved for the most part. Maybe, again, there's 1 or 2 things in here that they won't like, but I think overall it seems pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. Firstly, before we get into the cuts themselves, you and I were talking yesterday about something, and we were mentioning about putting sums of money in their broader context. Oh, we were talking about the military parade, and you were saying that basically people who were criticising the Army parade were getting a bit too exercised, given that the amount of money relative to the Pentagon budget was so small. Now, in this case, $9.4 billion, I mean, $1 billion is $1 billion relative to the amount of the deficit, the amount of the debt, the amount of the overall budget. It is a minuscule sum of money.
It should be higher, for sure.
Yeah, so that is, I mean, one issue that I don't think, I mean, President Trump was claiming something about how it was going to basically set the nation on a much better path. You know, he is pushing forward the so-called Big Beautiful Bill, which is projected by the CBO to add $2.4 trillion to the deficit over 10 years. On the actual cuts themselves, I mean, you know, look, I am not going to be in the position of being some absolutist and saying no money can be cut from any program ever. I don't think that is true. I do think there are criticisms. I mean, we read one from Murkowski there, so even some Republicans having some criticisms. And, you know, a lot of organizations do express a lot of concern about these cuts. $500 million to be cut from activities relating to infectious diseases, 400 million from efforts to mitigate HIV, which you mentioned a little bit in the context of PEPFAR. And the Catholic, would know this probably because of your faith, Catholic Relief Services, is that correct? It's a Catholic charity, have told supporters to call Congress about the cuts because they believe that, quote, countless lives are at risk and the needs will continue to rise once these cuts are made.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not familiar with Catholic Relief Services, but if they're anything like Catholic Charities helping to shield illegal immigrants, I don't know about that. But
a schism in the church here, Amber.
Well, they're not like part of the church. They're nonprofits that identify as Catholics, so it's complicated. Some of them are, some of them aren't. It's complicated, but nonetheless. It looks like Don Bacon apparently switched his vote to yes on the rescission package because he got assurances that PBS will be funded in fiscal year 2026 government funding. So I don't know what the heck the point of getting rid of that was. And then they also had a discussion on PEPFAR and global AIDS prevention cuts. So it sounds like those might be coming back. But I often think that with these programmatic cuts, sometimes you have to dig deeper into just what the name of the program is, particularly with things like infectious disease prevention. Maybe you dig down and you find out that they were doing gain-of-function research, and so it doesn't sound as nice with the packaged name on it as they would like you to believe. So it's hard to have I'm making the point that it's hard to have a substantive debate when we're just listing the names of programs rather than what's actually in them.
I agree with that, actually, but I think that it cuts both ways. So, for example, the converse of it's for infectious diseases, so it is therefore good, would be something like the claims that are often heard from the right, which is like, it's all radical DEI, so it should all be cut. There may be some things under that umbrella that are very hard to justify. There may be genuine efforts to mitigate racial or other inequities under that umbrella that are justified. And so the propensity to just give an overly broad terminology and argue that makes things absolutely right or wrong. I agree with you about that. I just think that it is a both sides thing to some extent. Next on Rising, the New York mayoral race is heating up. Stick around, we'll talk about that.